All right, may I have everyone's attention and we'll get started. I should have figured it would be hard to get started when we have people here that we haven't seen in years and years, like Bruce, and good to have him back. And I especially want to welcome our esteemed founder, the Raven, Jim McDivitt. Thank you for making it here. So we are gathered to remember, to honor one of our special friends who was part of Men of Steel, really from the very earliest days. And so we spent 20 years on the trail with Mac, and we tend to get to know each other pretty well that way. And you know, I think he was universally admired in this group, and I think the reason was that he just exemplifies so many things about when you think, that's a man I admire. What are those qualities, you know? And I think for Mac, first and foremost, it was always clear that he was a loving spouse, father, and grandfather. And he was also somebody that I think we respected because he was the kind of guy who you would want smart and courageous if you had to go into battle. And in fact, he had done that. But the Mac that we knew was very much a gentle man, someone who didn't have to be bellicose or aggressive to show you that he was a man. He was a peaceful person and somebody that absolutely loved everything about the out of doors. He was a consummate endurance athlete. He was the kind of fisherman you want on your group if you need dinner, because you could count on Mac to bring back food. He was somebody that was absolutely a loyal friend, and so for Bob, the pictures represent 50 years of friendship. And he was absolutely the kind of guy that you want to have a beer with, as we all know. He was fun, he had enthusiasm for being outdoors, and he had enthusiasm for our ERT. So what we're going to do today is, it will be in two parts. The first part is essentially going to be a memorial, and the second part will be electrolyte replacement therapy, which Mac loved. And I want to thank everybody that contributed to the food and all of you that contributed money to making this venue possible and the salmon dinner possible. So we'll do it in those two parts. And the place that we're going to start is Jerry Beer is going to play a tune for us.
This is a mandolin, and among mandolin players, the saying is, you spend half your time tuning and half your time playing out of tune. And with the, playing outdoors like this in this humid, wet weather, hopefully it'll stay sort of in tune for the song. So the song I'm going to play is Ashokan Farewell. Ashokan Farewell was written by Jay Unger and his wife Molly Mason. And Ashokan is an Algonquin word that means someone who fishes, someone who is around water, likes being around water. So there may be some similarities there for Mac. Anyway, so here it is. Thank you, Mac.
So the next thing we're going to do, I think quite a few of you have indicated that you want to tell a story about Mac or remember one of his jokes. Remember, this will be viewed by members of the family, so you might want to edit accordingly.
This is a little poem. It's so little, it doesn't have a title. And it was written by someone named Anonymous. So it kind of personifies Mac, that Dave just said about nature and water. And anyway, here it goes. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sun on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken to the morning's rush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there, I did not die. The end.
I met Mac, I believe it was 1974, so if you do the math, that's almost 50 years ago at the YMCA. So there could be numerous stories that I could tell you about things that Mac and I conversed about. I'll tell you two quick stories, one having to do with Mac's sense of humor. After the Y closed, several of us would meet once a week at Elephant's Deli off of Burnside for a coffee. Many of you attended those coffee sessions. Mac, as you know, was a West Point graduate and very much an Army man. One of the fellows there by the name of Wayne Ray was a Navy guy, okay? So they would banter back and forth at some of these sessions. And at one occasion, Mac showed up with a very nice book, about that thick. And it had a cover on it, really a nice cover. And the title on the cover was The Greatest Achievements of the U.S. Navy. Well, Wayne Ray looked at that and he thought, my gosh, Mac is presenting me with this book. And he opened the book and he thumbed through a few pages and he started smiling and finally laughing. The reason being that every page was blank. And I think those of you, I think McCoy might have been there on that occasion, or some of you might have enjoyed that little sense of humor of Max, and it exemplifies him. The next one has to do with Cycle Oregon. In Cycle Oregon, which many of you have done, it was our custom, no matter when everybody came in at the end of the day, to group together and pitch our tents as close to one another as we could. So I came in, I was pitching my tent, looked over, there was, on this particular Cycle Oregon, both Mac and Jean, his wife Jean, were on the Cycle Oregon. They were pitching their tent. Just adjacent to 3 of our Cycle Oregon friends, 2 of them are men of steel, Lou Lauman, Eldon Schmidt, and anybody? Jeff Johnson. I heard a laugh somewhere. Also, Jeff preferred to lounge around on a hot day in his Fruit of the Looms. He didn't have his swimsuit or shorts. He would wander around in the Fruit of the Looms. And Gene and Mac being in the tent next door, I noticed that they were dismantling their tent. I walked up to Mac. I said, where are you going, Mac? He said, well, Gene and I have seen as much of Jeff Johnson on this trip that we care to see. So, any of you remember that? I know there were some of you that were there on that particular. So they moved their tent to a little different location. Another thing, you know that Mac was a fisherman, and I found this little plaque that hopefully we can get to Gene, and it says, "Gone fishing. I've finished life's chores assigned to me, so put me on a boat headed out to sea. Please send along my fishing pole, for I've been invited to the fishing hole, where every day is a day to fish, to fill your heart with every wish. Don't worry or feel sad for me. I'm fishing with the master of the sea. We will miss each other for a while, but you will come and bring your smile. That won't be long, you will see, till we're together, you and me. To all those that think of me, be happy as I go out to sea. If others wonder why I'm missing, just tell them I've gone fishing."
I really wish I could be with you guys today to help celebrate Mac's fabulous life. I always enjoyed having a chance to hike with Mac on the trail. We both had trained at Fort Sill, and so we had some lively discussions about artillery. But most of all, I remember the things I learned from him about birds. He was a wealth of knowledge, and I always learned something new whenever we encountered some new birds on the trail. Here's to you, Mac. I'll miss you.
Mac was a loving man, and he's gone. And there's much of him that's not gone. And those are the values he left with each of us and with his family and his other friends. Mac valued integrity. If Mac said something, you could count on it. He was a man of his word. Despite the fact that he was a heck of a soldier, he was kind. And anybody who knew him knew how kind he was. But in addition to his values, which are many, Mac had another quality. And as I was sitting here, I was trying to think, if Mac was up here now, what would he say? Well, he would have a certain command of presence. He would stand straight up. His chin would be high, and he would look at all of us, and he'd want us to be okay, to be happy. And in trying to take words out of Mac's mouth, I went back to his last email. And his last email was to all of us. And he said, "And if it should be unto our lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and I'll softly say, goodbye and joy be to you all." Thanks, Mac.
Well, I did not know Mac as long as many of you, but I had a very heavy heart when he passed away for many of the reasons that Dave outlined, and we had some one-on-one times that I wanted to share with you. But I noted a few things just from missing Mac on the trail. You know, I just enjoyed his cheerful attitude. It was always upbeat. I loved his fishing stories, and I enjoy fishing as well. So I enjoyed kicking it around. He loved that new kayak he bought, and he outfitted that, and he would give us reports back after he'd been out. And he was fishing by himself when he went out with that. I enjoyed his love of birds, and he and Bob were our experts, and Tim, on birding. And we always turned to him and to Bob and said, "What is that sound? Identify that bird." His smile, and especially his smile and his laugh. And when he would tell one of those jokes, the twinkle in his eye and that smile was something I'll always remember. But more than that, and Raven, the similarities, I had written this down. More than that, I'll remember him as a kind and caring man. And 3 little short stories I wanted to share with you. Mac and Jean had a beach house in Tierra del Mar, which is just north of Lincoln City, or excuse me, north of Pacific City. And we had a place in Nescoin, so we weren't far apart. And on one of our MOS hikes, Mac said, "Do you ever Dungeness crab from the shore?" And I said, "Never have." He said, "I want to teach you the fine art of Dungeness crabbing from the shore." So he gave me a call. We were at our beach house. I went down. Jean was taking care of the kids at their place in Tierra del Mar, and Mac and I went out to the garage and we grabbed buckets, the traps, the measuring device to measure the crab to make sure the Dungeness was the right size. And I assumed we'd drive because he wanted to go to Sand Lake, which was a mile or 2 or maybe even 3 down from where we were. But no, we're men of steel. He said, "We're going to walk down the sand." So we pick up all this gear and we trudge, and I mean trudge. And about 20 minutes down, I said, "Mac, are we about there?" "Oh, yes, we're about there." 15 minutes later, we're still trudging. But we did get to the estuary of Sand Lake. We caught some crab, and we trudged back. But it was a special memory. And from that time, I've bought the gear and taught my grandkids how to Dungeness crab from the shore. We've been to several different places. Our children and friends, and we've been out on different outings, all because of that little moment that he shared with me. At one of our Christmas parties, Mac and my wife Andrea were visiting, and they were talking about predicaments. And Mac got that smile of his, and he said, "I want to tell you one of my predicaments." And he pulled out his phone and showed a picture of his wife Jean in the laundry room trying to retrieve a sock that had fallen behind the washer dryer. So she's all played out over the washer dryer, and she's down in there and gets stuck. And so Mac, of course, had time to take the picture, but then he pulled her out. They laughed about that. Was that the beach? Yeah. Or was it, Bob? Yeah. And finally, something that's special to me, Mac and I were diagnosed with cancer about the same time, or I think it was 2019. And I went over to his house, and Jean was there as well, and we talked about his prognosis and what the next steps would be. This was like 4 years out from today. And I was just getting ready to start treatment. So I went through 6 months of prostate treatment, and I shared that story with all of you. And during that time, Dave Shaw said to me, "When you're ready to get back on the trail, I know you like scotch, so I'm going to bring some scotch and some cups, and on one of our hikes, we're going to toast the fact that you've finished your treatment, and the future hopefully looks good." So I finished the treatment. Dave didn't forget to do that. And on our hike at Cooper Spur, we were at the rock shelter, you all know that, just below Tie-In Rock, and Dave brought out the scotch, and we toasted. And this picture of me, you can see snow on Mount Hood back there. I have my scotch in hand, and my other hand, my thumb is up. I'm smiling. A few weeks later, I get this card in the mail. Mac and Jean had sent me this picture. It's on a card with a note inside, "Congratulations." And Mac is starting this process too. And this card sits on my desk. I look at it every day, and it gives me hope every day. His kindness and caring, and Jean as well, was really special. And I guess finally, just a little poem I wanted to share. Several of you have done it. Hanging in our beach house was the author is unknown, a poem that I used to read, and when I would read it, my cares and worries would just kind of go away. But the reason I wanted to share it, it was pertinent to that Mac things he liked to do and the area of the Oregon coast that we were on. So here it is. Maybe tomorrow I'll charter a boat and go crabbing on the bays. or a trip to Lincoln City to pick up some fresh flowers. Maybe tomorrow I'll take a shower under the falls and drink in nature's beauty, or hike at Cape Lookout and watch whales on their way home. Maybe tomorrow I'll climb to the top of Cascade Head and look out over this gorgeous corner of paradise, or go deep sea fishing and see if I can catch my supper off guard. Maybe. Today, well, today, that's a different story. And Mac won't be having those tomorrows and those todays, but the fact that he made a good decision and no longer has the pain that he was struggling with. So I think Mac is having good, happy trails. So when I walk with MOS, Dave, Mac will be walking with me and with all of us. So happy trails, Mac.
I felt lucky to have known Mac at the YMCA for the Dawn Patrol. That's where we first met. I mean, we used to run in the mornings, exercise in the mornings for a lot of years. And then, of course, we worked with the MOS, and I was lucky to be able to hike with him there. But I think the thing I felt most honored about is that Mac and Jean did take care of some dogs, and they honored with me to let me take care of them. And just to tell you the kind of people that they are, they raise dogs for canines for independence, and as guide dog, or well, not guide dogs, but support dogs for other people. But that's just the kind of guy that he was. So I'm going to read some poetry as well, but I know who this author is. This author is Leonard Nimoy, and some of you may know him from Star Trek, but probably most of you don't know he was a poet. So it says, let's do it again, all over again, starting from the beginning. Let us retouch every step along the way, all the joys, fears, laughter, and tears that brought us as close as we are today. Let's do it all over again. I have watched the final touch of death. I have played the rules set by the master, though often I didn't understand the game. I have worn more masks than I remember. I have been a face without a name. And when, like you, I ask the final question, who on earth am I supposed to be? I always come full circle to the answer. Me. Only me. Always me. Mac was really special, and I miss him too.
I'm a junior member of this group, so I don't have all the stories that you guys have and the memories. But I knew Mac as a big, strong, handsome, intelligent, gentle, kind, thoughtful person. And so I just wanted to reflect on those memories. Every time I went on a hike, I looked forward to seeing him and those moments when we would walk side by side and have a conversation, listen to stories. He had a lot of wisdom. I miss him terribly, and I wish I had known him better.
Like John, I'm fairly new to the MOS, but it has been a wonderful experience for me. And you probably know a few weeks ago, we had a meeting after we had hiked, and at ERT, Mac showed up, and he wanted to speak. So after we had finished the food and stuff, he came and gave a little talk from his heart. So at the end of the lunch, Matt said a few words, and he was very weak, but this is what he basically spoke about. He spoke of his days at West Point and the friendship the young cadets shared as they went through a difficult program of training to be Army officers. These were lifelong buddies, and he never expected to find another group of men that would be comparable to his friends that went through initial training in the Army. Then he turned to the rest of us listening to him and said the friendships and enjoyment and experiences he had shared with the MOS are just as deep and important to him as the time he spent at West Point. It was an emotional moment for all of us. He was thanking us for the happy trails we all had enjoyed with him on every single hike. And I thought that was just something to equate us with the most important other people that had been in his life in the military. And we enjoyed him too, and we miss him.
Well, what do you say about a best friend of about 50 years? We had a lot of fun. We shared a lot of experiences. He had a major impact on my life. He dragged me into his Y class, or his yoga class, and that allowed me to practice dentistry for another 25 years. He dragged me into the Y class and figured I should be a charter member too. So yeah, we did that. And then of course that was followed with the running, and then we started to break, so we started biking, and then we kind of got away from that and started hiking. He was a great friend all the time, and all the time I've known him, I've never seen him angry. I've seen him pissed off, I've seen him frustrated, but I've never seen him really angry. It just wasn't in him. He managed to get through his life without needing that anger. As an aside, I've been on that hike from their beach house to Sand Lake a number of times. What he didn't mention was Mac has very long legs. And keeping up with him is not easy. He made so much fun. We caught crabs. That was a great place to crab, and that was the only time I've ever crabbed from the shore. So I dragged Mac over to the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, and we started doing that somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s. And every Memorial weekend after that, Mac joined usually Shirley and me, spending a long Memorial weekend at Malheur. And he was an excellent birder, and it was great fun to argue what we were looking at, when you don't always see the same things. And that's part of the game, so we thoroughly enjoyed that. He did not ride over with us. He'd go about 3 days early and fish his way across the state. So we'd get over there Friday night, and we'd meet Mac, and he always had fresh fish, which he would then barbecue on his little portable barbecue that he had camping. So that was always part of the deal. One year he didn't have any fish, and so he had to stop in the store in Burns and he bought some very nice steak for us. But he was really embarrassed. He'd much rather have been able to have the fish. We did so many different things together. If it was fishing, he's all ready to go now. One of those fishing trips, we went to the Deschutes. We were leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning. 4 o'clock in the morning, I hear a knock, knock, knock on the door. Well, it's Mac, and he thinks it's 5 o'clock. So I answered the door and told him go home. And he only lived about 6 blocks away. He went home, took off his shoes, fully clothed, climbed into bed, and slept for another hour, and then got up and came back and did it again. Gene never even knew he was gone. So, well, then I convinced him he should have a mountain bike. So we were mountain biking in the Coast Range on just a gorgeous day, and we stopped in a spot, and we were looking at a blue grouse that was sitting in a tree up there. Well, the grouse decided that Mac was a target and actually attacked him. And of course, I'm in hysterics, which doesn't help. And this thing is dive bombing him. Boom, boom. And they're big. They're big birds. I didn't realize how big they were. So that was kind of fun. It's just a little added adventure. With our wives, we went to the Galapagos Islands for a week. Incredible trip. There's some pictures in there from the Galapagos. Mac and I joined a friend on his boat in central Canada, off the coast of Canada, for a week, and that was almost amazing. The only thing we really knew, two things. One of the guys that was going to be there, the other guy that was going to be there, was a psychiatrist. And we were thinking, oh crap, we're going to spend a week with a psychiatrist? Turned out he's a great guy and really a good friend now. The other thing, our cost for this week in Bob Girding's boat was 2 bottles of good red wine. So we went to E&R Wines down on McLaughlin because we knew that's where Girding bought his wine. So we went in and said, Richard, we need some good wine to take for Bob Girding's trip. Well, we ended up buying a case, and it was about $300. And we split it on our MasterCards. And then Mac took it, the boat was here in Portland at the time, and he'd hired a guy to take it up to Canada. So Mac took it down to the boat and gave it to the captain and gave him his receipt which was half price. What we didn't realize is the reason he said 2 bottles of good red wine was there's no duty on 2. The duty on more than 2 is 50% of the cost. So the captain he only paid half of what he should have paid to get that case of wine into Canada, and we just had a good chuckle about that. So this was a tough week in Canada. We were subsistence fishing every day, which means putting out the crab pot at night and figuring out where we're going to fish tomorrow. We didn't starve. So anyway, Mac was one of those guys you could always ask him to help and he would always be there. And the punchline of one of his favorite stories was, a best friend will help you bury the body. We didn't ever have to bury the body, fortunately, but I did talk him into helping me build a new concrete cover on the septic tank at the lake. So that was an interesting engineering job, which we ended up doing, and then we built a whole new top for it. So he's into that. It was not a big deal. That's kind of the way he functioned. He loved life. He loved fishing. He loved birding. He loved to go out on a bike ride. Any of those things, he's just about ready to go at any time. And he's still out there somewhere riding. His church was the outdoors, and he was very serious about it. So, yes, I miss him every day.
To Mac, happy trail! Happy trail! And we're going to sing, and Jerry's going to lead us out.
For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny.
All right, he is a jolly good fellow, and we've loved having him with us.